Hello everyone, welcome to MediaNama. In November this year, X, formerly known as Twitter, filed a complaint against the sale of Infowars X handle to The Onion. X claims that as per their terms of service, Infowars X handle is its property. While X's terms of service give Infowars a license to its X handle, the website cannot sell or assign this license to someone else without X's consent. X's pushback against the sale of a social media handle poses a unique question. Who owns a social media account? Is it you or the platform? To explore this question, we have with us MediaNama journalist Kamya Pandey, who wrote an explainer about the situation earlier this month. Hi Kamya, to start off, could you run us over the facts of the case? What was X claiming?
Hi, Sakshi. Yeah, so X was basically saying that it doesn't agree with the sale of Infowars handle. While arguing this, the company pretty much admitted the fact that courts have not really addressed the question of whether a social media company has ownership over a social media account or whether the user has it. More than that, courts have largely looked at this question in the context of ownership claims between a company and its employees. So let's say, we work with MediaNama and MediaNama asks us to handle its Instagram account. Courts have looked at this question in the context of whether MediaNama would have that Instagram account after the employee leaves, or whether the employee would continue to retain access to that account, but not in the context of, what is the role of the platform here. However, despite the fact that courts haven't looked at this question, X used the tests that courts have come out with for the employee employer question and applied it to its own situation. There are three tests that courts have used that X is citing in its lawsuit. First is documented property interest. So this is where courts look at any written document or that explicitly says that an account is owned by a particular party. So if I run the account for a company and the company has a written agreement with me in place, which says that the company can take the account back after I quit, that would mean the company has documented property interest. Then there is control over access, which would mean who has the login credentials of the account. So if I have the login credentials of the account, then I would like sort of pass this test and the company wouldn't.
Hmm.
Then it comes to who is finally using the account. Again, same as access controls basically. So if I am the one who's actively posting on the account, then I would pass this test. So striking of the last one for who is using the account, because obviously the person who has the handle will use it, right? X focused on the first two tests. Basically, we're saying that a former US court judgment has established that social media companies are the ones that have exclusive control over accounts on their platforms. It also mentioned that account handles are a part of company services. So if you want to post on X, you need to rely on X's services to post content. That's what they're sort of saying. And the handle is one of those services. Also, it says that its ownership over X accounts gets emphasized by the fact that it has rights to suspend or terminate accounts for any reason or even for no reason at all. And this includes situations where a person violates the terms of service that X has in place. It was trying to say that one of the reasons at least, why it does not allow people to sell accounts is because it has the interest in ensuring that people don't create false or misleading accounts and confuse the public about who is the original owner. So if somebody sells the account, then even X wouldn't be able to know who now owns the account. That sort of situation.
So, what sort of situations do people typically sell accounts in?
There's actually a lot of different situations where people sell accounts. So one of them is, of course, what is happening on the Infowars front, where the company is bankrupt now and is sort of selling their assets. Uh, one of them being the handle. And then there are other situations like mergers and acquisitions. So if two companies come together, then The bigger company sort of probably would end up with the social media handle as a part of the purchase as well. But besides this, there is a whole practice on the internet called cybersquatting, where people occupy social media accounts that are either similar or identical to a trademark. So, a very, very good example of this is what was recently happening with Jio and Disney Plus Hotstar. And I'm sure you know about it, but for the audience, I'll mention. Earlier this year, Reliance acquired Disney's India business, and as a part of that acquisition, Jio will um, Reliance will reportedly merge Jio Cinema, which is its own OTT platform, and Disney Plus Hotstar. So some developer decided that since Reliance would need a name for the two combined platforms, uh, they bought the domain name JioHotstar. And then they were basically demanding 1 crore rupees from Reliance to sort of sell it back to them. So that is sort of the cyber squatting situation. In other cases, because this is again not the only way this type of situation happens where somebody sells accounts, uh, there are people who have like social media handles which are really unique or popular. So there was this person I spoke to, Shrikant from Cashless Consumer, who has a Twitter or X handle rather called Logic. His handle is quite unique. So from time to time, especially when X used to be Twitter, he had a lot of offers for sale for his handle.
Are social media accounts actually company property?
That is a difficult question, and there's two different answers to it. I'll sort of like split it that way. The actual account, yes, that is X's property or any other platform's property. So if you are using their services to create it, invariably it's theirs. But what platforms don't own is the content that you post on their services. So if I post pictures, videos, all that, that's still mine,
Hmm.
whether I post it on X, whether I post it on Instagram. X acknowledges this, by the way, in its lawsuit as well. So actually, a complaint rather. They say that they only claim ownership over the handle, not the content, because the content that a user posts is distinct from their own services. So that's one thing. Also, what platforms don't own is something called goodwill, which is a concept in intellectual property.
Hmm.
And this is something that the handle or the handle owner rather has. So let's say, for example, that you're a very big influencer and, people know you as a credible source on X. You have a huge following. People like your tweets, people retweet you, all that. So while X can say that they own your handle, they can't say that they own the likes that you get, your follower count, or all the, recognition and trust that is associated with your handle. So then the question that comes in, which I honestly don't know the answer to, but I still think is worth asking here is how do you separate here what is X's property and what is the user's goodwill? Because they both come hand in hand, right? Like the handle is what makes a user recognizable. And since the handle is what makes people recognizable, that will probably, be a part of the goodwill that the user has established.
And then, can platforms interfere with the sale of accounts?
I mean, ideally, they shouldn't. Based on an expert I spoke to, uh, at least in India, platforms under the IT Act and the rules that came out under the IT Act later, platforms have intermediary status. This means that they're just middlemen, like they're helping people communicate with each other. So if you're an intermediary, the question is, can you, seek claims to a transaction where somebody sells their handle to another person? And what does this mean for a neutral intermediary status? Because that's what companies claim under the IT Act and have claimed in multiple, sort of safe harbor situations that they have nothing to do with the content and all that. So uh, another thing we have to consider here is that besides the InfoWars situation, there are a lot of legitimate reasons why somebody would need to transfer accounts. not like sell either, but just transfer account. So let's say if I run a franchisee for something like a Domino's in my hometown, which is Meerut, the company might give me permission to create an X handle like at Domino's Meerut. But if I do a horrible job of running that franchise, the company might take back the franchisee and also might take back permission to use the handle. And then they could, end up giving it to somebody else that they gave the franchisee to in Meerut. In that case, my question would be, can X still object here? Can they still say, you can't transfer account ownership because, platform supersedes ownership in that situation?
So another question that I had is, how do companies typically approach users to buy their accounts?
So, Shrikant, I mentioned him, right? Like in the context of cashless consumer and his account logic. He said that people have approached him over things like DMs, emails, etc. Uh, Companies don't usually approach him directly, but rather there are consultants in place, marketing consultants, social media consultants, who reach out for these purchases. When I asked him, whether they are doing it for a specific brand, he said no, or at least they don't tell him. It's basically, having a handle is basically the equivalent of having a good property. So sometimes the consultant would buy the handle, hold on to it for a long time, and then wait to sell it to the right buyer for a very good price. And outside of the consultant angle that he told me about, and my own research tells me that there are proper marketplaces in place that allow people to sell their accounts. So there's things like FrameSwap or Flipper seem to be legitimate enough platforms. There's chatter on Reddit and stuff about them. That they are legit, but then there's no guarantee that the person who's buying your account is actually buying your account and all that.
But so what is Twitter doing to sort of counter these accounts, like these marketplaces then?
I mean, I don't know if they're doing anything. That is another thing that I have a lot of questions about. In the Onion's case, that they have actually actively sort of, tried to uh, tackle the situation, filed a complaint with court and all that. But why have they not done anything in these cases? So I just like right before our call, I took a look at FrameSwap, and there I saw that there was like a whole segment where you could buy Twitter usernames. Uh, so there's like, you get an idea of their audience and there's bids and all that jazz. So it basically tells me that, that this marketplace also allows people to buy X handles. Twitter is what they used to be earlier. If that is the case, then why is X active approaching the situation of social media account ownership, specifically in the Infowars case, and not trying to, take down these platforms,
Yeah.
or rather preventing users from posting their uh, accounts on these platforms? One thing I would like to mention though is what Shrikant told me again. And I don't know whether this is specifically to tackle the situation of people approaching others to buy accounts, or whether it's larger moves that the platform has made for other reasons, for like sort of establishing legitimate users and all that. Shrikant mentioned he's been on Twitter for a really long time, that instead of approaching him that there have been a lot of different things that have happened over the course of the platform. The number of interactions that he's had with people, like consultants who approach him, have declined first when the platform implemented the blue checkmark policy for verified accounts. So now it's like very, distinct when a brand owns a handle and all that. And then when platform put in restrictions for DMs, so users can now opt out of receiving DMs from any specific user that doesn't follow them. So if you and I don't follow each other, I can't send you a DM if you haven't opted into letting, strangers send you DMs. So if a stranger can't send you DMs, then these consultants can't approach you. Same thing with the verified thing, where if a company can sort of buy a verified tick mark, would they really need to jump through these holes and uh, approach somebody to buy their handle anymore? I don't really think so, because they can still establish legitimacy because of the verified mark. Those things exist from the platform side. But I don't know whether these are moves for other reasons or whether these are moves to tackle this whole, buying the platform, buying the handle issue.
Thank you so much, Kamya. I think this was very helpful. It raises a lot of questions that not many can answer, I would say. But thank you regardless. And we hope to see you in the next video.
Just wanted to add one thing. If you want to learn more about this issue, you can read my story about this and a lot of different contexts that we have on MediaNama about social media account ownership. Thank you.